Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I don't do a lot of concert or music performance photography. I have in the past, but I do have a yearly concert that I do photograph, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about that today. One of my customers, who is also a friend, is he's an elected official. His name is Don Harmon. He's actually president of the Illinois State Senate. So he's Senator Don Harmon. And Don is actually a very good guitarist. And he had a band in college. And so every year he has a fundraiser. It's actually the only fundraiser he does. And it's at a local music club. So he gets his lead singer that he went to college with, and who's also a friend going back to childhood. And they put on a performance, and they hire some professional musicians to kind of raise things up a bit. And it's always a good time, and I get hired to photograph it. And I thought we'll go into this a little bit today. So now I used to, when he started doing this around 10 years ago, I was using the 5D Mark II, which I moved to the Mark III at some point when that came out, and used the 24-105 f4L lens. And generally, the exposure ranges in the ISO-wise were, 6400 or above. So what I do now is I use my Lumix G9 and Lumix G95 cameras, and I use the Lumix 25mm f1.7 lens on the G9, and then I use the Lumix 42.5mm f1.7 lens on the G95. And thumbnail shot. And as far as settings go, I shoot in manual mode, aperture set to f1.7, shutter speed set to 125th of a second, which is fast enough to freeze motion that you really kind of want to freeze, like facial motions, for the most part. You shoot a lot just to, in case something is blurred, but slow enough so that hand movements, either strumming, guitar, bass, or drums, is somewhat blurred, because that looks better and more dynamic than having, it's completely frozen. A guy on the drums, everything's frozen. So ISO is set to auto with an upper limit of 6400. And in general, I find that the ISOs are falling between, sometimes it depends on the lighting, because the lighting is always changing. So usually falls between 1600 or so on the low end up to 5000, once in a while 6400. Not a problem. The images are fine, especially since they're not going to be used huge, but it really wouldn't matter anyway. And I shoot in RAW. White balance set to auto white balance. Again, lighting's changing, the color is changing. You want to have it set to RAW so you can use like the dropper tool in Lightroom or whatever program you're using to hit a patch of white to do the white balance. And I will show images to show you what happens if you don't do that. If I need a wide shot, I step back with the 25mm. But I also have my iPhone 12 Pro Max in my pocket, and I use the main camera, which is a 26mm equivalent, if I need to go wider. And the quality out of that is fine for this. And the auto white balance on the iPhone is actually a little better than what it is on the Lumix cameras, actually frequently significantly better. So there's not as much issue with it having to adjust the white balance. And I actually don't set the phone to RAW. I have that just shoot the simple HEIF files for that. And then also grab some video clips with the phone. They hire a professional videographer who does video of the entire concert. So I just shoot some clips just for personal Instagram use and such. Oh, and when I shoot video, I just use the built-in mics on the iPhone. And there's really no need to go to anything better than that. Of course, if you put on a external mic on the iPhone, you'd get better sound. But the sound that comes out of those little mics on the iPhone, they're just fine for general use. Now, word about file size. Files that I provide are actually downsized from what was in the camera, what the camera captured, and even what the phone captures. I provide files that are 3,500 pixels on the long dimension. And really, if you look at that, I do print fulfillment on SmugMug, and SmugMug, to print their very largest sizes, really only needs a file that's 3,500 pixels on the long side to get good results. Back when I shot the 5D, Don wanted to give a couple prints to his lead singer and his lead guitarist. So those were 5D shots, but he wanted them severely cropped. And he wanted 16 by 20 prints. So I cropped them, and it turned out the crops were right around 4 megapixels. And went ahead and had them printed on SmugMug. And they were fine. They were fine. It wasn't an issue. The prints looked great. Now, one thing, these are not hugely detailed photographs like a landscape of the Grand Canyon or something. These are simply people either singing or playing an instrument. So that's one of the reasons why that wasn't an issue. But now, today, with these modern AI upsizing algorithms, it's even less of an issue. So file size is not something that I really worry about. Anyway, let's have a look at some images. I'll describe the band personnel. The stills that you're going to see were all shot with the cameras, either the 25 millimeter Lumix 1.7 or the 42.5 millimeter f1.7. The videos, obviously, I shot with the iPhone. I should mention that repertoire-wise, the songs that the band plays are Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and essentially songs in that genre. Well, let's meet the band. On rhythm guitar, centered on Harmon. On lead vocals, his college bandmate and childhood friend, Steve Schering. And as I mentioned, I shoot RAW and I use auto white balance because if you don't do that and you shoot JPEG, you're going to have to deal with color like this. It's going to be a lot harder to correct that using the white balance tool in Lightroom or whatever editor you use. On lead guitar, Bruce Sheridan, professional guitarist and also a professor of cinema and television arts at Columbia College in Chicago. On bass, Jim Bonacorsi. Jim was the original bassist for the Freddy Jones Band. Some people may remember their hit In a Daydream. I'll link to that video down below. On drums, Nick Kitsos. Nick was drummer for the Bodines, the Freddy Jones Band, and Poi Dog Pondering, and also plays with Jim and his brother Rob Bonacorsi in the Bono Brothers Band currently. And on some songs, Don's son, Don Jr., joins in. Now, as I mentioned, I'm primarily using the Lumix 25mm f1.7 and Lumix 42.5mm f1.7 on the Lumix G9 and Lumix G95 bodies. But if I need to get a wide shot, I either step back a little bit, which isn't always possible, or I pull out my iPhone 12 Pro Max and use the main camera, which has a 26mm equivalent, and it does perfectly fine. And in fact, it has a superior automatic white balance. On the cameras, I set the metering mode to intelligent multiple and the autofocus to face body detect. And generally use the AFS autofocus rather than continuous. I set the drive mode to continuous medium. I can get different angles as well because I can get to the side of the stage towards the back and get a view from there. Back to the iPhone. Although they do hire a professional videographer, I do grab some video with the iPhone, and actually it's a pretty decent sound for such a little device. So with that, let's go ahead and have a look at some video and listen to the band.
Here in Youngstown, here in Youngstown, my sweet jam sinking down, here down right in Youngstown.
So that's some concert photography for you. Again, points are that the Lumix equipment is perfectly capable of providing perfectly fine results for this. I have never had a complaint from anybody. And just as little pointers to keep in mind your white balance, because you know the lighting changes. So you want to shoot raw, and don't worry too much about noise at higher ISOs, because it's really not that evident in the file of this type. And when they go to print, not going to be a problem. And actually, that downsizing I mentioned, that actually gets rid of some of the noise because it just gets lost in that downsizing. So I hope this was useful to you. And also, one more thing, keep in mind, you know, what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, and sometimes you gotta experiment and maybe take what I'm saying and just adjust it if you have to for what you do. There's so many videos on YouTube telling you do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do that. You know, that's fine. I think it'd be much better to be out shooting and learning and making mistakes. You know, take what people on YouTube tell you, but remember, it's not written in stone. You want to play around with things and change it. So anyway, if this was entertaining, informational, useful to you, please like it. It helps me a lot. And any comments, insights, questions, leave them below. I will respond to those. And I'm Todd Banner, and I will see you next time.